Meanings, 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 meanings.
Are you saying meanings or meetings?
Meanings.
Meaning.
Rafi's Rambles, Rafi's Rambles, Rafi's Rambles.
Hola, you amazing artist. And today we're going to talk about art meanings and what it means when there's
Otherwise known as the artist's intention behind the work as presented with the work and possibly an accompanying statement.
A statement? I would like mine medium rare.
A statement. Listen, I think a lot of people are going to be mad at us for this video no matter what we say.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing. There's going to be art snobs, insecure artists. One of the biggest issues that I had when I started my art career was that I thought that every work of art that I created had to have some kind of deep significance behind it. Let me tell you what the significance of this piece is. Almost like as if people that were creating already knew the deep significance before the creation actually came to life. It wasn't until I actually started doing this and was consistently creating art that I realized that that's absolute and complete bull. Let's take on the hateful comments now. Come on, bring them on.
Go ahead, scream them at us.
That's because you don't know what real art is, Rafi.
Sometimes you have an intention and you set out to say said intention in a piece of art, but I don't think you ever fully know what's going on with the art till it's done. And
Yeah.
I like the quote that I'm going to paraphrase here. My brain often doesn't know what my hand is up to when it comes to artwork. I also dealt with this insecurity of feeling like it needed to have grandiose meaning, which only led me to write overly wordy, totally lame artist statements that were like 3 pages long, and rereading them, I was like, I don't even know what I'm talking about.
The reason that we're talking about this is because we got a question from EstherJones.com.
Hi, Esther.
Hey, Esther.
Esther said, I notice a lot of classic art has a meaning or meanings from the socio-political climate of the time. In fact, I've noticed a lot of art has a meaning, sometimes obvious and sometimes not. Does great art have to have a meaning?
So my response to Esther was all art has meaning. And this is where people are going to get up in arms and be like, well, the only reason that you think that is because whatever it is that those hoity-toity are, the reason that that concept exists or that perception exists is because in the art world, there's always been a story that is behind a said painting, right? Like, it was never just Van Gogh went to the field and saw something pretty and decided he was going to paint it. It was Van Gogh is blah, 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 blah.
It's often assigned to the work by onlookers and speculators after the fact.
After the fact.
Van Gogh was lonely. He was a lonely guy.
And he went out and painted flowers and shit. When you look at the life of an artist and the creations that they create, there is meaning behind them, and it is a very personal meaning. It's the reason that people create the art that they create is because there is some feeling behind why it is that they create it. Whether or not that has geopolitical significance or whether it has any other kind of significance to anybody, especially everybody across the board, it's not. Some people are going to look at a painting of flowers and they're going to get some kind of meaning from that. I have a friend who is convinced that every painting of flowers means that the artist is making some kind of sexual prose. That's what he sees when he looks at the paintings, but it doesn't necessarily mean that that's what the artist meant when they painted it. But even still, that painting does have the significance of being something that that artist wanted to paint. As an artist, you have to ask yourself that question. Why did I decide to paint flowers and not paint roadkill?
Yeah, you can't really help but to have meaning and feeling behind it as a human being. Like, who was ever able to say, while I created this work, I thought nothing and I felt nothing. That would actually be really difficult to do.
I mean, that's actually kind of cool. That might be a new series.
Painting while thinking and feeling nothing.
Nothing.
But
I felt nothing while I painted this, and it is about nothing.
Unless you're deliberately trying to do that, you are thinking and feeling something while you're creating the art. And oftentimes, when people look at it, they're going to talk more about who you were. We care about who Van Gogh was.
Yeah.
How he was feeling, who Picasso was.
Yeah.
On the whole.
I mean, it's one of the reasons that Van Gogh's letters with his brother are so intriguing, because like you get to take a glimpse into this person's life and see the struggles that they were having. So like at that point, the significance of the flowers, of the sunflowers, changes from one thing to another because of the context of it. There is so much more involved in a painting than just the subject matter or the meaning behind it. When it comes to art, a lot of my pieces, it is the texture. It is the materials that I'm using. It's the way that I'm using the materials. It is the subject matter. It is the way that I'm feeling. It is the colors that I'm deciding to use. There is so much that goes into a work of art that it's hard to just quantify it as one meaning. As human creatures, we're not that simple. We have a plethora of things going on with us emotionally at all times. And I guarantee you that there will always be a little bit of that in your artwork. Thus, your artwork has meaning.
So I guess what you're saying is don't worry that you're an oversimple human who doesn't have any meaning behind their work, because it's kind of impossible.
It is. It's impossible to not have meaning. Now, people out there will argue. They'll be like, Rafi, all art doesn't have any meaning. So are you saying that this stick figure has meaning? Yes. Yes, I am.
That stick figure has a lot of meaning, sir.
Is that urinal that was signed? Does that have meaning? Yeah. And that's where the divide comes in, because some people in the art world will say, no, it doesn't. It doesn't have any meaning. It's just a urinal. And some other people will say, well, yeah, it has a deep, significant meaning based on the context of how it was put out there.
And your job as the artist is to let them argue about it while you make more art.
Now, one of the things that I like to do is I create a piece and I know that I'm guided by my emotions. I know that I'm guided by something that is usually outside of me, even if I am painting something simply because I think it's beautiful. The way that the art comes together usually does not quite look exactly the way that you envisioned it in your mind. It's almost like your artwork takes on a life of its own. And in all honesty, if you're sitting there and trying to contemplate the exact meaning of your art before you've actually created it, before you've gotten to meet it, then I feel like that process is forced, because art is so fluid and just kind of creates itself. At the end of working on some art, I will actually sit back and look at something. I may have had some kind of fuzzy meaning behind it. I allow myself to feel the emotions and really understand, what does this piece mean to me? What is the deeper significance, if there is any? It doesn't necessarily have to have a deeper significance, but what does this make me feel? And so like you just take that, and it could be anything. It could be like the blue tones in this really, really remind me of the ocean. And so that could be the meaning behind the piece. It doesn't have to be geopolitical. It doesn't have to be anything that has like deep, morose feeling behind it. It could just be something that makes you happy. And so you could call it the circle of happiness or the circle of life.
The simplicity of growth.
Yeah, you could call it anything that you want, because it is going to be subjective and relative to the person that's looking at it. I have a deep significance when I look at cardinals. Whenever I paint my cardinals, there is a deep significance there. It has to do with my grandfather. It has to do with the lessons that I learned in life from my grandfather. And so those pieces are very peaceful, and that's what they mean to me. But someone else might just be looking at one of the paintings and think it's just a red bird. There may be no significance to it, to them. So like, that's the thing. If you are worried about what the significance is to someone else when it comes to your paintings and whether or not it's a deep significance or not, then you're going to drive yourself crazy. Whether or not it has a deep significance to you, it doesn't matter. As long as you enjoyed the process of creating it, as long as you put it out there, let other people decide what it is that the significance means to them, because that's their job. Your job is, why did you create it? And it could be as simple as, oh, I like this color.
Keep it simple and not be embarrassed by the simplicity of it.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that if you do have a deep significance behind a piece of work that you are working on or that you've created, that there's anything wrong with that. There's not. But I think it's the perception that everything needs to be that way. Listen, if you created it, it has some kind of meaning to you. It doesn't matter if it's a stick figure. It doesn't matter if it's a flower. It doesn't matter if it is a deep figurative work full of shadows and nightmares and stuff like that. It has a significance to you, which is why you chose to create it in the first place.
There are going to be some folks out there that are going to hold to the idea that unless your work is commentary on the current state of the world or the region you live in, it's not real art.
Yeah.
And that's okay. There's art for them too.
That's fine. If that's the kind of art that they're into, then that's the art that they're into. It doesn't define. I love how people use that excuse as real art is this, real art is that. Art is art. I wipe my butt with your concepts of real art. And if you don't like it, well, too bad.
It's better to wipe your butt with concepts than to wipe your butt with real art. 2 new series were born. I wipe my butt with your real art, and I think nothing, and I feel nothing while I'm creating.
Everybody was a contemporary artist of their time, and who knows what they'll call us. Like I said, they're the ones that are going to decide to go. The Impressionists didn't call themselves Impressionists. That was actually a put down.
It was an insult, yeah.
Yeah, it was an insult. So, who knows what they'll call us, or it just, don't worry about the deep significance of your art. And especially do not let this concept feed into your imposter syndrome and into your insecurities, because all that's going to do is stop you. If you're thinking to yourself like, well, real artist, whatever, and I have to prove myself by making sure that my piece has a deep, significant geopolitical meaning, dude, that's a lot of stress, especially if you want to just go out there and paint beautiful flowers.
You could be like, my statement for this piece is that I created it while being horribly stressed out about what I was going to say about the piece when it was done.
Now, I do suggest that you do have an idea of what something means, which is why I always take the time to sit down, really study the piece that I just created, and see what significance. It doesn't have to be big. It doesn't have to be deep. What does this mean to me? Why did I create this? What is it that it makes me feel? And that way, at least I know where I stand when it comes to my piece and why it is that I created it in the way that I created it. But as far as what somebody else sees, it's not my job to convince them to see what I see. You don't have to explain yourself. We're artists. We're nuts. We can come up with any significance. Deep significance could be found in a stone. If you're looking at it, you're like, stones make up the earth. Klee is like, stones make up the earth. That's the full-on conversation that somebody has with Klee when they ask her about inspiration.
No, that's not true. I go into the history of Earth becoming and how supernovas form precious metals.
Oh my goodness, here we go. Hopefully that gave you guys some insight to where we stand. And like I said before, this is opinions. Everybody has their own opinions. Some people will fight tooth and nail that everything should have deep significance and meaning and blah, blah, blah. And usually those people aren't very happy. I'm just going to put that out there. But basically, you have the right to believe whatever it is that you want to believe about the work that you're creating. Whether or not you think that someone else's work should be that way, I mean, that's all a matter of opinion. Just like my opinion is my opinion. Hopefully my opinion brought you some clarity. I don't know. Whatever. Some meaning.
Esther, thank you for your awesome question. I think it's one that everyone who creates has to wrangle with at some point, to whatever degree they feel their work has meaning. It's something to look at and determine for yourself.
And I'm curious to know what you guys think about the whole topic of meaning behind your art and stuff. And thank you so much for watching, you guys. You guys are absolutely freaking amazing. I totally adore you. And if you like this and you want to watch more like this, just click right over here to subscribe. And that's it. Say goodbye, Klee.
Good day.
Adios.